And welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. Very privileged to be welcoming State Senator Scott Oelslager with us today. Good morning.
Morning, Susie. Glad to be with you.
So glad that you could take some time to be with us. You are a busy fellow.
It's been a little bit busy, but you and I go way back, so when you called, I wanted to make sure I came over.
Thank you so much. What are you doing right now? You are so working on so many things, so many bills we see your name attached to, sponsoring or co-sponsoring. What's top priority on your plate right now?
Well, the top priority we just got done was the capital improvements budget. That's the bricks and mortar budget of the state of Ohio. Deals with things like roads and bridges, local infrastructure projects, the universities, school facilities commission. And we have spent about $150 million on what we call community projects. And those are projects that my colleagues working with their local communities come up to me and say, as chairman of the finance committee, say, this is really important for us. And so we work with that. In fact, Stark County is getting about $5.9 million. The governor just signed the bill recently. So we just wrapped it up.
And is that mostly for infrastructure? Is that for other kinds of projects as well? And if so, what other kinds of projects?
A large segment of it is the local roads and bridges projects, called the so-called Issue 2 projects that the public in the state of Ohio approved back in the 80s, and they've renewed it constantly. Many years, that money has been, in some cases, the only money local governments have received for their local roads and bridges, and so it's very important. That's a large chunk. Also, the higher education is well over $400 million. And what we're doing with them is that we have them sit down and work this out amongst themselves, so what universities need what funding. It's a lot easier that way for people like me. And this time, I'm very proud of them that the great majority of the money went to maintenance. Because, we're in a transition time, as you well know, in higher education. So we're saying, give us the money you need. We'll try to give you the money you need for maintenance. If you absolutely need a new building, sure, we'll look at it. But the community projects, like in Stark County, we got $1 million for a joint project between NeoMed and Altman Hospital that would go in the Hall of Fame Village. We got $750,000 for redoing Duncan Plaza in Masson, to name a few that we did there. $750,000 for the parks in North Canton. And $200,000 for Waynesburg to do a park down there. So that was just some of the things you do. It's a very fascinating project and process, and I enjoy working with the local communities because you can see what their priorities are, and you try to do the best to help them.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting to see all the ways that different areas work together. To think that there's NeoMed and Hall of Fame Village.
Yeah.
And this would be to be providing health care for retired NFL players, I'm guessing?
Yes, and they're going to do research there, and Altman Hospital is also a partner.
Wow.
And so it's a perfect public-private partnership concept, and it helps keep the Hall of Fame Village going also. But yeah, a lot of these projects are partnerships between local government, sometimes the community, nonprofits like the Canal Fulton received $750,000 toward their YMCA projects. So the village is working with the YMCA, which is working with us to try to make that happen to enhance the quality of life in our community.
I can't imagine the responsibility of sitting down with that many dollars. I know, just, at home when you sit around the kitchen table and you make your priorities. How in the world do you go through that process of I think of that scene in Dave, when they're going through line by line, and we don't need this, but we need this.
Well, let me just go back. I'm going to come back to the capital budget, but as chairman of the finance committee, we did the operating budget last year. And when you said line by line, it triggered what happened. By the time that Governor Kasich introduced the budget, till I got it back about in May, we were like $1 billion plus underwater.
Oh.
And so literally I sat down with the President of the Senate, with my staff and his staff, and we spent the next 30 days line by line with spreadsheets going through that state budget to make sure we got it balanced. We did. We balanced it without raising taxes. We balanced it. So there was cutting and other things were done. But that's what you sometimes do.
It was really like the scene in Dave.
It was like the scene in
Dave. You were
Dave.
Charles Grodin.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
And fortunately, that I've had the privilege of serving the people of Stark County, thanks to them, for a long time. So I know the ins and outs of state government. So I actually knew the programs that we were going over, where we could take from here to give to there, where we could cut. But literally, people don't hear that too often. But yeah, you do line by line with spreadsheets, input, and then back to the capital budget, which we just got done. The input there is that I have my colleagues, as I mentioned earlier, they work with the local communities. I have the Democratic members and the Republican members come into my office, and we talk over their requests. So I do my best to meet what their needs are. But the capital budget as a whole is $2.62 billion for 2 years. And so you do the best you can, but, it's really neat when you think around town, like Palace Theater has received those funds. The Mass Museum has received funds like that. The Cultural Center for the Arts. One of the cutest times was the Osnaburg Historical Society in East Canton. I'm doing one of my walks through the square. I hear my name being called, and I can't see. I'm looking around thinking, am I hearing things? And here's a gentleman in the top floor of this little Osnaburg Historical screaming at me. To make a long story short, we got him $10,000 to help the building. But
he was at the right place at the right time.
But this is where you really touch people's lives.
Yes.
And in this job, you do that. But you really try to enhance the quality of life for your community if you can.
I think it's important to stress that a lot of these that you're talking about are just renewals when they're coming up. That is how important it is. Did you say this is going to be issue 2 to be for our roads and bridges and so forth?
It was issue 2 when it initially passed.
Okay.
And the public in the state of Ohio has done it a couple times now. And I really can't remember when it'll be in the ballot again.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a great program. It's called the Ohio Public Works Commission. There's individual districts. And so since I helped write the legislation, I allowed Stark County to have their own district, so we didn't have to compete with other counties for money.
Thanks.
And so we did that. But it's a great project. It doesn't require a tax increase. We can fund it through the normal cash flow of the state. And the overhead in Columbus, we try to keep it about 2%. So the money that comes in, we send it right back to the local communities where it can do the most good.
One thing you mentioned I think is really important to think about as well. You're able to do this because, as you've said, you've been a public servant for some time. May I ask how many years?
Yes, I first was appointed in February of 1985.
I remember that.
Yeah, you and I remember that.
Yeah.
You and I go way back.
My
we sure
goodness, wow. And we wouldn't have the advantage of having somebody know the ins and outs if you had not served for those number of years. I know sometimes in the position of state senator and sometimes as our state representative. Talk to me about term limits. Here's what I'm thinking. We've always had term limits. It's called an election. And if you don't want somebody doing the job, then you vote for the other guy. So tell me where I'm off base there.
Well, that's kind of my philosophy too. And fortunately for myself and Kirk Schuring, and hopefully for Stark County, we have been on the same path. And so when Kirk's term limit is up in one house, and so is mine, and we put ourselves back on the ballot, and ultimately the people have to decide. But I can tell you that does make a difference because knowledge is power. I remember in my grade school, then carved in the wall outside says knowledge is power, and experience makes a big difference. And at this point in time, with myself being chairman of the Senate Finance Committee and Kirk being the number 2 Republican in the House, we have a lot to say about actually how the state goes. And it makes a difference. To be able to sit down and read legislation and have a history of your own that you've worked on before, the knowledge you get just in any job with time that goes by, you can serve your constituents better. If a constituent has an individual problem with the state, I know where to make the phone call to get it fixed. Where if somebody knew that they're doing the best they can, but in all likelihood, that takes a little longer. So it's made a big difference, and we've tried to make the best impact we could on the state of Ohio and Stark County.
Well, I think, anytime you take on a new job, it takes a while to learn the job.
It does.
We don't want to discourage anybody who is feeling called to public service. Go for it. But it is very great to be able to have some who know their way around the block a little bit and know who to call for what.
And you start to network like you do in any job, and it helps you become more effective for your community.
So you're going to be running for state representative?
Yes, I am this fall, and so ask the people for their votes and see what happens. I'll do the best I can.
Now, what kinds of things do you work on as state representative that would be different from state senator?
It's no different. And the difference is the size of the districts. There's 3 House districts for every Senate district. And so but the job is the same. There's 99 members of the House and 33 members of the Senate. The House is a little different dynamic because there are more members. But the issues you deal with, the people you help in your community are the same people, same type of job that you try to do. It's
an amazing way of doing things, isn't it? Those founding fathers, they really had a lot on the ball, didn't they?
Yeah. When
they were putting this all together.
It's a miracle, really, especially in today's modern age with all the pulls and the tugs that our constitutions of the United States and the state of Ohio have held. Yes, with some amendments over time, certainly. But it's held, and our system of government, with its balance of powers and sharing of power, is probably the. As I think I heard a statement. Maybe Winston Churchill said. I'm paraphrasing. That said, it's maybe democracy isn't the most convenient form of government, most efficient, but it's the best we know. So everybody has an input. When we have hearings in Columbus, people come down from all over the state to share their views, and that's very important. Every year I've had the privilege of serving here. I do my walk and talks in drives through the community, where I stop into stores and sometimes knock on doors and homes just to see how's it going. And that's what the essence of representative democracy is about. So you can keep your mind open to listen to what you're supposed to be doing for your people.
Right, and to hear another point of view. We don't know what we don't know, and
That's right.
other people have other points of view, and it seems to work the best when we're all working together. Let's talk about that a little bit. It seems to me that at the state level, we do a better job of that. At the local level and the city level, we do a better job of that than we're doing at the national level. Is there any chance that the national folks can learn from the state and local folks of how to reach across the aisle without demonizing the other side?
Yeah. It's sad what's happening in Washington right now. The greatest country in the world, and yet our government is so split. It takes some work to do that. But the main thing is, no matter what party you are, that you keep an open door and the open mind to the other side and respect them. As I mentioned earlier, during the capital budget, I have both parties come into my office, members, and get to know where they're coming from. When I do the operating budget, too, especially with my committee, the finance committee, both R's and D's, but with the members as a whole, it says, you've got to let me know what your priorities are, what really is motivating your people right now that we have to try to address. It takes work to do that, especially, again, with an overall climate of hostility to a certain degree. But in Columbus, it's a smaller pond, and I think that helps. We've had some very good debates in the floor of the Senate that can be kind of, emotional.
Yes.
But after it's all over, you walk over and say to the Democratic member comes over and says, good debate. We're still friends. We have different views. But if people would come to Columbus, they would be amazed in the floor of the Senate. I want to say at least probably 85 to 90% of the bills are bipartisan that we vote on. They'll see a 33-0 vote or 32-1. And now, when it comes to the spending bills and taxing bills, that's 10 to 15%. There are differences because there's different philosophy of the parties.
Sure.
But we still have a nice debate. We enjoy each other's company when we walk off the floor. It isn't as if I hate you forever just because you disagreed with me on this issue.
Right. But you see families split down the middle. You see friends, longtime friends, unfriending each other on Facebook. And I think this is out of hand.
Yeah.
You agree?
It is. And it's I think it's the culture as a whole. It's perhaps because of different news outlets that have one view or the other.
Let's park there a minute. I want to ask you about that. Where do you get your news? Because I'm sad to say I have seen shared on Facebook and some other things I know not to be true. You can easily fact check. You can easily look things up. You can see, this was a photograph that was altered. You can see that so easily. Can we all just take a break before sharing something knee-jerk wise and check something out before we spread rumors?
Well, again, for our democratic republic to survive, it takes people doing that, to be open to the other side and doing your education. And yes, keeping with your philosophy and your basic views.
Your core values.
Your core values, keep those,
Mm-hmm.
but at least be open. We get clips every day from newspapers around the state that staff puts together for us. So I get my news that way. I'll read news magazines. I'll read different. I'll read the Wall Street Journal at times. I'll read the New York Times at times. I'll do that on TV at night. I'll watch Fox. And my wife loves the 5, and so if I'm home, I'll watch the 5. And then Brett Barrett's about 6.
I like Brett
And
Barrett.
then I might watch a little Chris Matthews just on MSNBC just to see what he's up to. I've read all his books that he's written, and when he writes his books, he's pretty nonpartisan. I mean, he's a little bit of a Democratic slant, but not too bad. And then I'll go to CNN for a while, and then maybe back to Fox. So I try to do that because I have to, because I represent people that watch all those outlets.
That's right.
And I have to be their voice and at least understand where they're coming from. And you're right. At times I'll see and think, well, I'm not so sure that's true. And some of the players in D.C. I know personally. So if something comes out, I'll say, well, I know that person better than that.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put that.
And
yeah.
so, some of the key players that people see over and over in the news, I know those people. I've known them for years. And so that's what you have to try to do. But it's tough because you have strong core values. It's very difficult to purposely listen to something you might not want to agree with.
Right. But it is interesting to know another person's perspective. It's not going to change my core values, but it is good to know before you can have a decent conversation with someone, to know where somebody else is coming from so you can speak their same language and find a point that you both agree and start there. Yeah. We need to agree on taking a short break here. I knew this was going to go too fast for me, but we're going to be back after these words, visiting with Senator Scott Oelslager. You're listening to Our Community.